Hello, so I'm back again. It's been quite some time since I last made a talking video about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and I've been working on some longer videos about them, but it just didn't really make sense to put it out because no one's really talking about it anymore. But this week there's been some chatter about Johnny Depp because he had this new movie coming out, this French movie about a king and his mistress and something, and there's some backlash happening with Amber Heard supporters. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk about was this discussion on the Piers Morgan show. He had a guest, Nick Wallace, who is the journalist who went to both of the trials and watched it live and reported on it. And they were just talking about like if he should be welcomed back and is it hypocritical and blah blah blah. And I thought that what they said was it was kind of unsatisfying. They didn't really dig that deep. It was just a really vanilla sort of discussion that didn't really add anything new. It was the same stuff that you hear over and over again, and I thought I could just play the clip and then interject here and there to add my comments and some stuff that I think they missed out on, because I think sometimes when people talk about this case, it feels really shallow. They don't really get into specifics about certain things, and I don't like that. I think people need to be a bit more blunt when they talk about this stuff because I don't know what they mean. I'll explain when I get there. But before that, I did want to talk about Johnny Depp himself because he had to answer this question when he had a discussion about his movie, and I thought it was kind of a funny answer that he gave. Okay, so some background on this is that Amber Heard supporters were upset that Johnny Depp's new movie was the opening for the Cannes Film Festival, and they started this online campaign just talking about how abusers are allowed to participate in the Cannes Film Festival. It's not just Johnny Depp, but before that there was like Woody Allen and Roman Polanski and other people, so they're just calling that out. And then an American reporter asked Johnny Depp directly in this discussion that they have how he felt about it, and he said this. He goes, "Imagine that they said to me, I cannot go to McDonald's."
I
Does
don't
it
go to
bother?
McDonald's.
Does it bother you that does it bother you at all?
This particular thing caught my attention because before this interview of him came out where he answered this question, for another video, had to look up a picture of Johnny Depp eating. I googled Johnny Depp eating and I couldn't find any pictures of him eating anything except for this one picture from a long time ago, like 20 years ago or something, where he seems to be biting into a sandwich, and it will not do for the purposes that I needed it for. And then on top of that, I kept finding all these bizarre pictures of, I think, his fans editing him eating hot dogs and burgers, and it's very bizarre that they've done this. I don't understand why specifically that they kept photoshopping these images of him. I don't know if it's like a sexual thing or something. Perhaps I would prefer not to know the reasoning behind it, but I just thought I should just point this out and maybe someone has an answer for me. Anyway, he goes on to say, I cannot go to McDonald's, long pause, for life, long pause, because somewhere, long pause, if you got them all in one room, 39 people watch me eat a Big Mac on a loop. Who are they? Who are they?
Who are you?
Is he maybe referring to the 300 experts in domestic violence that signed that open letter in support of Amber Heard? Is that who he's referring to, or is it something else?
She always says that. It's a little game we play every week, same dippy little look on her face. Who are you? Who are you? Just like that.
And then he says, why do they care? Why would the domestic abuse experts care about him and the effects of that trial? I don't know. I don't know. It's a huge mystery as to why the experts would care about something like that. And then he goes on to say, some species, a tower of mashed potatoes covered in light from a computer screen.
Nobody ever knows what you're talking about.
You know, I think he might be talking about someone else, because he's saying, carrying behind a computer screen, anonymous, anonymous.
It's me.
I don't think it'd be completely out of line to think that maybe he's referring to people like me.
Feeling a flood of emotion right now.
Yeah.
Humiliation, embarrassment, a little hungry.
And then I think he's trying to make some sort of fat joke by referring to McDonald's.
I
don't go to McDonald's.
Does it bother you that does it bother you at all?
And be like, oh, you losers, you're so fat and da-da-da, and your computer screen is covered in potatoes. I'm trying to decipher this man, but it's really difficult to understand what he's saying. I've said it many times, I never know what that man is talking about. Anyway, he goes on to say that the anonymous apparently have a lot of spare time.
I mean, I have to laugh.
And that part I thought was kind of laughable, because it's weird for him to be someone who mocks people who have too much spare time, when I've seen the type of stuff that his fans do. Like I said, they photoshopped all those bizarre images of him eating burgers and hot dogs for I don't know what. I'm still hoping to figure out why. And spending 6 weeks, hours every day trying to see him in person, having a parade for him in person. He didn't have a problem with those people who had too much spare time on their hands. But then when it comes to Amber Heard supporters, who the most that they've done is create this, one person created this these little graphics saying hashtag CannesYouNot, and then which took a few minutes, it seems like, and then a few people liked it, which took a few seconds. Some people signed this open letter in support of her, so it's not seeming that time consuming to me. So I don't get where he's coming from with this. It just feels like projection, because you can tell that his supporters spend a lot more time obsessing over Amber Heard, making thousands of videos about her like every day. So I think this just feels like projection to me. I just think it's really awkward that he's saying this, because he's like, people who, these hypothetical 39 people who would like give him mean stares when he eats this hypothetical burger from this fast food place that he would never go to, and saying, oh, they would like stare at me for 10 seconds whilst I shove this burger into my mouth. Aren't they losers? Meanwhile, his fans spend hours and hours slaving away making actual paintings of him eating burgers and holding hot dogs for some bizarre reason. And he's like, why are they doing that? Why do they care? And it's kind of like he's attacking his own people in a way, because this is just a hypothetical thing, first of all, and then the reality is that the people that support him are kind of are obsessed in doing this stuff, but in a more dramatic way. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's just awkward, I think. Okay, so now let's begin the Piers Morgan discussion.
Now, Johnny Depp was vindicated at his recent trial in America.
No.
With Amber Heard ordered to pay him $10 million.
And I am choosing to ignore this verdict.
What? You can't ignore the verdict?
What verdict? See, this is me ignoring the verdict.
But genuinely, the verdict that the jury decided on doesn't count anymore because they both filed for the appeal process and then ended up doing a settlement where Amber Heard's insurer had to pay him $1 million instead of the $10 million. So she didn't really have to pay anything, and there was no NDA, and she still stands by her story and said that she told the truth. I understand that they do have to say what the jury's initial verdict is, but I find it interesting that they conveniently leave out the part that she also won one of her counterclaims and was awarded $2 million. They always seem to leave that part out. I think that the fact that they settled in the way that they did means that it's kind of unresolved, and it's not accurate to say that it was a win for him if he's gonna concede to that much less, and then Amber's still allowed to say that he's a wife beater if she wants to. I don't think that that's completely a win for him.
And basically exposed as a liar.
What the hell did you just say?
And basically exposed as a liar.
This is wrong. This is wrong. This is all so wrong. You try to be good, but you can't because it's all wrong. It's all wrong. Don't fucking wrong.
There were no proven lies told by Amber Heard.
Does Johnny Depp have the right to relaunch his career?
So this is the first part of the discussion that I saw that I really wanted to talk about. The stupid myth that has been perpetuated for ages that Amber Heard's accusations against him was the reason why his career went downhill. That's the part that I wanted to expand on, because what's the evidence that that's even true? Because he never lost anything after she came forward with the TRO. He still was in movies, he still was doing interviews, and everything was fine. So I don't understand why they point the finger at her necessarily. I get that those accusations tainted things, but I don't think that you could say that that is the only reason why people didn't want to hire him anymore, because there are a lot of factors. And with his new movie, the French one that he just did, there was controversy with him. Not controversy, but issues behind the scenes with the director, that he was showing a play that he had an issue with the director knocking on his door. He thought that was very rude, and they got into a lot of verbal arguments, and apparently it was very difficult filming with him, and they ended up cutting his role to only 10 to 15 minutes of screen time as a result. So there are problems like that. And even with the press conference that he had to do like a couple days ago, it was supposed to be a 45-minute press conference, and he showed up 42 minutes late. And those were also factors as to why people didn't want to work with him anymore. The drugs and alcohol became an issue. He was late on Pirates of the Caribbean, and it wasted a lot of money. So there are a lot of factors as to why people didn't want to work with him. On top of that, there are plenty of examples of people who have admitted to abusing their partners, men who've admitted to that, and their careers haven't suffered very much as a result. Chris Brown would be an example, Mike Tyson, I think, lots of people. So I don't understand why people are acting like that's the reason why people get fired. I don't see it as a big contributing factor. And it's just disgusting to me that they point the finger at this one woman who nobody cares about what she had to say ever, and say that she is the reason why, you know, he's not working and all that. But where's the proof that that's the reason? And I don't like the way that she's being scapegoated to be this villain when there's so many problems with Johnny Depp. And then suddenly they start having this discussion of like, should abusers be able to work after they've been violent, and giving their opinions on that. And Johnny Depp answered this question and said, I suggest before people start pointing fingers and making judgment on others that they have no idea about, I would say everybody take one day off of work, stay at home, start your investigation of everyone in your family. Start with your father. Look way back. Dad always been just a wonderful guy, has he? Your uncles. Before you start passing judgment on someone that you have no idea what that person has been through, who they are. So that was a very interesting quote, and it kind of makes it seem like he's saying that a lot of men have been violent and abusive, and that they have to, because it's so many, that you have to kind of let them get away with it in a sense. And I've genuinely made this point before myself, that I don't think it is a practical solution if we say that you're gonna fire every single person who's been a domestic abuser. It won't really work out, because people are financially dependent on domestic abusers, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So sometimes when people talk about domestic violence and say this person shouldn't be able to work ever again, it seems like they're kind of far out and they don't understand the topic very much, because that's not very realistic to a lot of people to say that that's a good problem solving technique. So I could understand his point there. However, I think when it comes to people in showbiz, the argument is that they're supposed to be role models, so you hold them to a higher standard, and that's the reason why people think that someone like Johnny Depp, someone like Roman Polanski shouldn't be able to continue doing what they're doing, because it sends the message that everyone is able to get away with like pedophilia or domestic violence, and that there will be no consequences at all, and you can make a lot of money still. But then again, maybe Johnny Depp does have a point by saying it is hypocritical if you say that most domestic abusers eventually should be able to continue working and doing their normal jobs, because like society will fall apart if they don't. Like maybe he sees it as like, that's unfair that you let these people get away with it here, and then for him, he's supposed to, the assumption is like someone like him can never ever work again. He's supposed to just hide away, and he's like, that doesn't seem right, that doesn't seem fair. So I could understand where he's coming from. However, I will just say,
Life is unfair. Kill yourself or get over it.
anyway, moving on.
Is Hollywood being hypocritical by celebrating someone who'd even been accused of such behaviour and, of course, lost a libel case in the UK?
I just feel like they're just lying constantly, that Hollywood fires these people who are found guilty of domestic abuse. I don't think that that's really a thing. I can't find too many examples of it, but it keeps being spread. This stupid myth has continuously been spread, and I don't know why we have to pretend like it's at all, like, how it's not a real thing, is it? And when Amber Heard first came forward with the TRO, nobody fired him. When they made the joint statement that she didn't make a false accusation, he still didn't get fired. He only got fired because he started suing the newspaper, and then all this stuff came out about him, the misogynistic text messages, which, by the way, that in itself could be a reason to not want to hire him anymore. Those things are a good reason for why someone wouldn't want him to be working in regular Hollywood films. So I don't see any hypocrisy. I don't see them changing their behavior in any way. So no, I don't think it's hypocritical exactly.
But he doesn't have a completely clean slate because he lost the libel action in the UK. A judge ruled that the Sun, basically, by calling him a wife beater, that they were entitled to do that. So it's messy.
You know, it's really mind-boggling that people refuse to admit that that's a proper defeat, what happened in the UK when 3 High Court judges looked over the case. There's like over 100 pages explaining why they came to the decision that yes, he is a wife beater. It's weird that so many people are still like, oh, it's, you know, he won one and then he lost one, but it's up in the air, we'll never know. Like, I just find it really interesting that people are behaving this way. And they don't even say it's a tie, they say it's like an actual victory, like the last one won. Doesn't matter that Amber Heard won 4 out of 5. They're still saying because he won the last one that means he's the overall winner. How do you arrive at that?
Victory cheer, everyone. Are you serious? No, it's a big joke.
We're down 1,000,000 to 4. Victory is a mathematical impossibility.
We need to motivate them.
How about we cheer, stay in school, learn algebra, you have no future in sports.
That's not motivational.
We'll throw in a hey at the end.
But
This is the problem with men today. They go straight from sports, where we tell them they can do anything, out into the cruel, hard world, where clearly they can't, and they have no coping skills, so they walk around the rest of their lives confused, stunned as to what happened. They were supposed to be lords of the universe, not wearing a fake referee's outfit at the local Foot Locker, so they drink and get fat and die of a stroke at 46, all because we jumped around yelling, yay, team, instead of letting them feel like the failures that they are.
And the thing is, if we're being really honest, the only reason why he won in the US is because it turned into a big popularity contest and it wasn't really about the truth. A lot of people weren't listening to the arguments on Amber Heard's side, and you can see it in the YouTube, like most people are only tuning in to listen to Johnny Depp's witnesses and him, and they weren't looking at a lot of the people who were speaking on Amber Heard's side, and they weren't interested in the truth. And if you look at some of the posters that people made when they were standing out there, someone said, no matter what happens today, you are a winner. And this is something that you saw a lot in like the comments, that people didn't think he was going to win because defamation suits are hard to win. A lot of lawyers were making videos explaining that it was unlikely that he would win based on the instructions. So a key thing that was explained to the jury was that if they believed that Johnny Depp had abused Amber Heard at least one time, then that means that he should have lost his case. And it seemed like there was no way of people denying that he had abused her in some way, because most people are coming to the conclusion that it was like this mutually abusive thing. So if you do think it's mutually abusive, then that means that he still loses, because he said that he didn't abuse her at all in any way, which is incorrect if they think that he did. So many people were prepared for him to lose this case, and in the UK when he lost, it didn't change anything for a lot of people. They still supported him no matter what. The director for the French film, she was willing to work with him after he lost the UK case. His supporters had already prepared conspiracy theories in case he did lose, accusing Amber Heard of paying off her makeup artist, of Elon Musk being involved and paying off so-and-so in case she did lose. They accused her of trying to talk to a jury member, of her fans apparently trying to get messages to the jury members. So they've already said all that in case if he did end up being unsuccessful, that was already in the works. So yeah, it's just very interesting how there's so many people that would never be able to accept defeat in this case.
And there's no doubt that this relationship with Amber Heard was extremely mutually toxic.
I doubt it.
And there's no doubt that this relationship with Amber Heard was extremely mutually toxic and abusive. It just comes down to how you categorise who was more to blame.
Okay, so I have to address the elephant in the room and ask this simple question of, like, if a man and a woman get into a physical fight, do you believe that it's a fair fight? And if not, what is the reason why you don't think it's a fair fight? Okay, moving on.
I think the point about Johnny Depp tonight is, should he be continued to be feted as a blemish-free movie star in the way we're seeing at the Cannes Film Festival?
No. Well, I'm sure he would say he had the right to do that, having got the verdict that he did in Virginia.
I'm not sure if I believe that he thought he was going to get completely clean slate, because he kept saying that he didn't think he was going to. He said that he was gonna deal with this forever, that people were still gonna think of him as a wife beater forever, and there was nothing that he could do about it. He kept saying things like that, and maybe it was false modesty and he really did believe he could change it. I'm not sure, but there's so many times where he wrote these text messages saying that it was going to be an agony on their backs that they're going to carry out for the rest of their lives and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if I think that he believed that he was never going to be questioned about this stuff ever again. I think that's pretty naive of him if that is true.
What about the other verdict in London?
Well, this is always going to be the fly in the ointment. Mr. Justice Nichol, a learned, respected judge, spent 3 months looking over the transcripts, the evidence, and all the contemporaneous documentary evidence, which he did place a huge amount of weight on. And after 3 months, he came down very firmly in favour of the Sun.
Yeah.
Amber Heard was the star witness in that trial. He essentially believed what she had to say.
So in Nick Wallace's book, he addresses this theory that Johnny Depp fans have peddled about the judge being biased against Johnny Depp because he had a relation via his son who had this unpaid part-time gig for Rupert Murdoch. It was a weird thing, and he kind of talks about how ridiculous it is. He says, "I'm not saying that Mr. Justice Nichol wasn't strong-armed by Rupert Murdoch into finding for NGN, or that he somehow felt some kind of allegiance towards him and therefore doctored his judgment. It is just that there isn't a single shred of evidence for this theory whatsoever. In the absence of evidence, we have to go on likelihood, and the likelihood of a High Court judge consciously choosing to pervert the course of justice to save his son's twice-weekly gig reviewing newspapers on a radio station is a sentence I can't quite believe I'm actually typing, but YouTubers, Instagrammers, and Pop Optic, ranked by Google as a news site, are peddling it, and people are believing it because it fits with their own preconceptions and biases." And also, it's worth noting that when Johnny Depp tried to appeal to other judges who have no connection to Amber Heard or have any children who work for Rupert Murdoch, they seem to uphold the ruling that said that he is still a wife beater. So yeah, there's that.
In the court of public opinion, you've got to say Johnny Depp appears to pretty well be unanimously the winner.
But domestic abuse is not a democracy.
Well, he is the winner, but as you know, it's all about the money, isn't it? And this has now come out of the courts and is now in the hands of the Hollywood studios. Johnny Depp has been on this incredibly well-managed rehabilitation arc since last year. He went on tour with Jeff Beck, was mobbed everywhere he went.
Dior just gave him a $20 million contract, the highest ever for a man with a fragrance, right?
And Dior never abandoned him, no matter what. Like, it's never been a factor. Violence against women has never been a factor to firing someone in showbiz. Is there any, like, clear-cut example where it really has affected someone's career, and you could definitively say that the reason why this person isn't working anymore is solely because he was violent against this woman. I don't think you could isolate it to that. And when it comes to Dior, the reason why Dior stuck with him is because I think when you do a perfume, it's very low effort. He didn't have to work that much. It was not an issue of him needing to be on time. So that's why it's easy for him to be able to do these short gigs that doesn't take that much energy out of him, and for it to not be a problem. Whereas like a movie where you have to be there for hours and he has this drug dependency issue, you could see why there may be other factors as to why he might not be able to work on these bigger productions, and that he has difficulty in being insured. So I don't like how he was able to testify that he lost everything, despite the fact that we can see that Dior has always been there, even after the wife beater ruling where he lost. They still stuck with him. I don't think it was right that he could say under oath that he lost everything because of Amber Heard.
Should Hollywood or a firm like Disney do that with Johnny Depp? Does he deserve to be brought back? I mean,
I'm so sick and tired of this stupid lie that him having a career in Hollywood had anything to do with Amber Heard's accusations against him. So many people have been accused or have been convicted of assault, and they still have careers in Hollywood. It's got no bearing. I don't understand why we keep peddling this stupid lie.
but an American court trial determined at the end of it that they didn't believe her, that she was a liar. It is clouded by what happened in London, no question. But the most recent test of the veracity of both of their claims about what went on that marriage was an unequivocal win for Johnny Depp. And he has taken that, as you would understand.
It was a 2-1, wasn't it?
Actually, it was 4 out of 5. Amber Heard won 4 out of 5.
It was a 2-1.
I say 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 5.
Yeah, but he won.
You win just a little, but you win.
So, in terms of the finances, he came out better, of course.
Did he though? Did he really get out better in the finances? Because I thought he spent like 26 million doing these 2 court cases and he only got 1 million in return. So how's he doing better in the finances? Plus, he lost out on some job opportunities, things that he never would have lost if he didn't do any of the court cases to begin with. So I don't understand how you say that he won on the financial side. Maybe they mean compared to Amber Heard because she lost a lot too, but it doesn't mean that he won. If anything, like this whole court case thing was like a murder-suicide type situation, so I don't feel comfortable saying that he won financially exactly.
What Amber wanted was that unequivocal win, the same win that she was able to obtain.
But she didn't get it.
On behalf of the Sun, and she didn't get it.
So why shouldn't he be allowed to continue with his career?
I am like blue in the face from how many times I've had to say this, that the violence against women thing, like if that was found true or not, would never have been factored into as to him not getting a job. It's never been a primary concern. I'm so sick and tired of this stupid lie.
As I haven't said he shouldn't be allowed to continue with his career. What I'm concerned about is the fact that they're not being treated equally.
Life is unfair. Kill yourself or get over it.
And what we have is a society who seems to accept that it's okay for a man to be an abuser, but it's not okay for a woman.
Life is unfair. Kill yourself or get over it.
I actually disagree with this point that male abusers can get away with it and then female abusers can't. It's not really about that. I don't know what the issue is with Amber Heard, specifically why people turned against her so much, it doesn't make that much sense to me. And if you look at some of Johnny Depp's female supporters, like Naomi Campbell and Kate Moss, so both of them have allegations of physical abuse. Naomi was convicted of assaulting people who worked for her like 4 times, I believe. And Kate Moss has, one of her exes accused her of smashing a guitar over his head, which is an act of physical abuse, and also said that she emotionally abused him by burning his stuff, including his childhood teddy bear. She also admitted to punching another one of her exes, and she's had like other types of physical altercations, like I think on a plane she assaulted someone. So there's stuff like that, and people don't have an issue with these two because they supported Johnny Depp. So I think female abusers can get away with it because the truth is that people don't really care about violence, low level violence. They don't think that people should face too many consequences for their actions. They don't think it should affect you for your entire life. So that's a perspective that I think a lot of people have, which does make sense to me to some extent. Now, the differences with Johnny Depp when it comes to the abuse that I personally witnessed him committing against Amber Heard, this global humiliation trial thing that he did to abuse Amber Heard further through the legal system, that goes a step further beyond what the low level violence that those women, Naomi and Kate Moss, did, or any other people that we've talked about, what they've accused each other of doing in their marriage. What he did goes beyond that because he's kind of perpetuated a lot of myths that is really damaging to victims who try to come forward in the future. Some people commenting on Amber Heard's injury, saying that she wasn't injured enough to be taken seriously. This man wrote out these deranged messages in his own blood, and people said that Amber Heard was hysterical, that she was being over dramatic, and she was making things bigger than they needed to be, and she was given this bogus borderline personality, hysterical personality disorder diagnosis from a woman who was instructed to diagnose her with these things before she had even met her. She was someone who had no prior experience or proper training for intimate partner violence, and gave this diagnosis of borderline personality disorder after speaking to Amber Heard for only 12 hours, which is not supposed to be the case. And people treated Amber Heard getting this TRO as some sort of crime. They found that it was wrong for her to want to get a restraining order from this person who wrote out these deranged messages in his own blood. They thought that she did something wrong, that she was trying to ruin his life because she did that, that she had no basis to feel fear from him. They didn't seem to understand it, despite all the evidence of his unstable behavior.
They have both sent out a joint statement to suggest that the relationship was volatile. They accepted that.
This was when the marriage was settled. But then
Yes,
Amber
that's
Heard
right.
went out of her way to become a spokesperson for gender-based violence based on her relationship with Johnny Depp. And that is the point at which Johnny Depp said, well, hang on a minute.
Wrong. He was so wrong.
I wanted to stop him there because this is something that I see not only him but other people say, that Amber Heard is making certain choices and Johnny Depp is kind of forced to act in response, that she's kind of provoking him to do what he's doing next. And this is just not the truth, especially when it comes to taking her to court like that. If we go through the timeline, we've seen the behind the scenes like text messages, we can see that that it wasn't really stoked on by anything that Amber Heard did. He always had this plan in mind. So to me, when it comes to this joint statement, I thought that this was the strongest piece of evidence to side with Amber Heard personally, because I read it as Johnny Depp admitting that he physically abused her, because when he said, when they both agree neither party has made false accusations for financial gain, that is agreeing with what Amber Heard had been saying publicly, that he beat her up. She was the only one making accusations. So I think a lot of people, when they saw that statement from them, that is what they took it to mean. If we look into the background of how we even got the statement in the first place, you can see that Johnny Depp is texting to Carino saying that he wants to find a solution with Amber to so that they can finalize their divorce, and he says that he wants to settle it, and he states, "Let's not forget who has been accused and portrayed daily and continually as an uncontrollably violent, savage abuser of women. She told the effing press that I'm drunk, a drug addict, and cocaine head. How's about she starts thinking about that? Because this statement makes me out as if I admitted to her false claims. The statement cannot be released." And I don't know if there was an earlier draft of the statement that was different, but I can't imagine there to be a different looking statement, because this one says neither party made false accusations. So if he's then saying behind the scenes that he thinks that she did make false claims, then he's clearly lied at one point. So here we can see that he clearly put a lot of thought into the statement. He did read it. He looked over it and disagreed with it completely, apparently. And somehow, we do not know how, but he decided to put the statement out there and not go to court back then, several years ago. And he's never really given a proper explanation for why he thought that that was a good idea. And I personally could never make sense of why an innocent person would decide to put out a statement that said something like that said that these accusations were not false. It just never made sense to me why he thought that that was a good idea. And then to add to my confusion about this whole thing, the exact day that they ended up releasing that joint statement that said neither party made false accusations, he also sent this text message saying that she's begging for total global humiliation and she's gonna get it. He said it on the exact same day.
It's weird, super weird.
So it seems like he kind of had a plan to take her to court no matter what. He said, "I have no mercy, no fear, and not an ounce of emotion left for..." And he's talking about wanting to go fight it out and all this stuff. So it's just very strange that he had this sort of plan to take her to court back then. And even though he was so against this statement that read as if he's admitting to being a wife beater, he still decided to put it out. To what benefit is it to him?
Did you what A-levels? What A-levels did you do? That's David's very polite way of saying you are thick.
And this is something that nobody has really tried to answer properly, and that I just think it's completely inexcusable for him to agree to something like that if he truly was innocent. Anyway, I just thought it would be helpful to show this timeline and show you Johnny Depp's inner thoughts while this stuff was happening, because I disagree with this idea that Amber Heard kind of caused this by making choices, and that if she, stayed small, didn't say anything, that he would have left her alone. I completely don't agree with that. I think he would have looked for any excuse to try to come back to get her. And even the jury seems to be confused about this thing, because one of the jurors said, that if she hadn't done any of the stuff with the op-eds, that Johnny Depp could have helped her out in her career, despite the fact that they were shown evidence of Johnny Depp texting his sister saying that he wanted her off of the WB film. And they were so... It seems like the jury really didn't understand what was happening at all, to the point that they said that they didn't leave things on a nasty turn.
I mean, I have to laugh.
It's just so wild to me that they say that they didn't think it ended nasty. Like, what do they mean? He was talking about wanting her rotting corpse to be decomposing in the trunk of a Honda Civic. Like, how's that not nasty? I don't understand how they can come to that conclusion. And I think it might be a bit hard for Nick Wallace to like be impartial, be kind of neutral, and have to look at things on both sides, and try to come up with a reason why Johnny Depp may be doing something irrational here. But when you look at the evidence, the way he was texting about it behind the scenes, like, this is the most irrational thing that he's ever done, and he's done so many irrational things, but I think this is the biggest thing that he did. Like, how can he agree with something 1 second and then he's gonna change his mind, and there's no benefit to him, and then he wants to take her to court, and he's so mean. Like, he's so all over the place. I don't know how you can excuse it and say he did something that made sense.
The way forward at the end of it was they had a highly toxic, alcohol and drug-fueled relationship.
But the excessive drug and alcohol usage is completely one-sided, because the conflict in their relationship is that he uses excess drugs and alcohol, and Amber Heard is encouraging him to stop, and he doesn't like that she keeps trying to tell him what to do. That's the conflict.
Which spilled over into verbal and physical violence, right? And this went on for quite a long time. And actually, they are both, I wouldn't say equally, because I wasn't there, I don't know. No. But they both certainly contributed to the blame.
So this is just like another cop-out answer, this mutual abuse thing, where what happened was, when they did the testimony, Johnny Depp came forward. He said that he was the victim, that Amber Heard came at him and irrationally attacked him verbally and physically. And then on the flip side, Amber Heard said the same thing, that she was the victim and that he would attack her verbally and physically, and that it was completely irrational. And you have to just pick a side. And I think people do this thing where they say the truth is somewhere in the middle, and that's just not the truth. I think it's more likely that one of them is just flat out lying, because one of them is the primary abuser. And when you listen to their stories, it's pretty clear that the truth isn't going to be somewhere in the middle. It has to be one or the other, and you have to decide.
Perfect. She didn't look like a perfect victim, Piers.
What,
she was supposed to sit quietly.
With respect,
she was supposed to accept the abuse,
hang on.
But she didn't.
Hang on. Stop painting her as some kind of angel. Amber Heard was not an angel.
Absolutely.
Amber Heard, from everything I saw, did some terrible acts of abuse, both physical, verbal. We saw it. We heard it. We heard the evidence. We saw the pictures.
No!
And it was proven that he faked a lot of his evidence, that he leaked edited audio tapes to make Amber look bad, because the only proven incident of her assault was the times that she's admitted, and one of them was where he had a mark on his face was because she was defending her sister and did it on instinct. There was another incident where she talks about hitting him by accident. So I don't understand how he's saying that this is an act of terrible abuse. It seems quite over dramatic. Like, I don't know what exactly that she did where that would make sense to say that she did a terrible, terrible act of abuse against him. Unless he believes that she did take off his finger with a vodka bottle, despite that being impossible to do, and this thing where he says that she put out a cigarette out on his face and there was no evidence that she did that. maybe that's what he's referring to, but it's kind of a stretch because it's just his word against hers. And then if we look at the unsealed documents, it says that Mr. Depp is not alleging harm based on any specific physical or mental injury. So I don't understand how he's come to this conclusion that she's inflicted terrible acts of abuse against him.
She's not an angel in this, right?
Shut your mouth hole.
I don't understand how is she not an angel if Johnny Depp himself said that the cruelest thing that she ever did to him was withhold his medication from him for 25 minutes because it was what she was instructed to do by the doctors. So if that's the cruelest thing that she ever did, it sounds like she maybe is an angel. I don't understand, like, why, how, what did she do that is so terrible?
You've researched him better than most people in this fascinating book. From everything you've gleaned here, where does the truth lie, do you think?
Well, one thing that I have learned from studying this case and reporting on both of them on the ground is that no one has a monopoly on truth.
Or on being a victim.
Well, this is where you get right into the culture war, because there is an argument on, I would say, the feminist side that there can only be one abuser in a relationship. The concept of mutual abuse, which came up in the Virginia trial, is something that I don't know whether colleagues of yours would say does not exist, because it allows abusers to say, you're abusing me, you're the problem in this relationship, and it can turn things on its head.
Yeah, and this is a common thing. Like, they make it out like this is the first time they've seen a victim hit their abuser, but we've seen multiple examples of this before. Prominent abusers saying that the victim has hit them as well. Chris Brown said that Rihanna hit him first, and Gabby Petito admitted that she hit Brian first. So, and O.J. Simpson said that he was a battered husband. So there's all these things. Like, it's not unusual for a victim to hit their abuser. So I don't know why Piers Morgan is sticking to this idea that it doesn't make any sense and Amber Heard is not a typical victim when she clearly is. And now there's 300 experts who've sided with Amber Heard and said that this is a typical representation of a victim.
But what's the message that's been sent to victims of abuse?
Life is unfair. Kill yourself or get over it.
So the message that's been sent to victims of abuse, particularly women, is don't speak out if your man is rich and powerful.
Or if you're lying.
That's the message.
Or if you're lying.
Shut the hell up.
But the thing is, Amber Heard was accused of orchestrating this hoax with zero evidence. People were allowed to do that and come up with these conspiracy theories of her applying makeup or assaulting herself. And Piers Morgan actually brought up this case that I don't know very much about, but he said someone had attacked themselves and it was caught on video. And basically it was an example of someone lying. And my question is, like, what is the problem-solving technique moving forward? Because if this is someone who's attacked themselves, they have real bruises. What it makes it seem like is that you'll never believe a victim unless there is actual video evidence of their abuser attacking them. Because with what happened to Amber Heard, people are just going to come up with all kinds of conspiracy theories as to why the woman was crazy enough and they must have attacked themselves, they must have painted things on. Even for me, when I came forward about being attacked recently, someone accused me of faking text messages, of painting on bruises, of, I don't know, I guess injuring myself. And it's all kind of stemmed from the standards of the Johnny Depp trial, that they think that women will just make up these kinds of claims, and also being mocked because the injuries I ended up receiving didn't, according to them, didn't match up with the description of how I said I was attacked, and that was used to mock me. And so I think all these things kind of stem from the myths that the Johnny Depp trial perpetuated about what your injury should look like.
So please, just please,
Watch your mouth, ass bag.
Well, in this country,
Well, Amber Heard,
she's not
in
a
America,
liar.
Amber Heard, it was determined she lied, right?
So the jury ended up saying that they thought that they were both abusive to each other. I'll remind you that they also awarded Amber Heard $2 million in her counterclaim. They said that they thought that they had their husband-wife arguments and they were both yelling at each other. He said that I don't think that makes either of them right or wrong. That's what you do when you get into an argument, I guess. But to rise to the level of what she was claiming, there wasn't enough for any evidence that really supported what she was saying. Now, a big difference between the UK trial and the US trial was that there was a significant amount of evidence that was left out for the US. One piece of evidence includes Johnny Depp's assistant, Stephen Duter, texting Amber Heard saying that he told Johnny that he kicked Amber, and that when he told him that Johnny ended up crying. And then Amber Heard replies that this isn't the first time that he's done it, that he's done it in multiple cities beforehand, and that she always expects that he'll change, but he never does. So you can see that that is a significant piece of evidence that was really important to ruling in her favour in the UK. And again, as the jury says, that they didn't think that the level of injury or whatever was rising to the level that she described. But then if you look at some of the audio tapes that was played in the US trial, you could hear that Johnny Depp said that he was afraid of their situation, that it was a crime scene waiting to happen, that he thought one of them would end up dead. So it seems like, according to him, that he thought that their situation was pretty serious. And another important piece of evidence that was left out was this long tape that was made in Australia after the incident where Johnny Depp ended up losing his fingertip, where one of his bodyguards says that he could see 2 bruises on Amber Heard, and he also witnessed cuts on her arm. So this was another important piece of evidence that helped back up Amber Heard's story of what happened in the UK trial that was left out. The tape also shows that Amber Heard had a consistent story, because the bodyguard refers to Amber Heard saying that he took 8 to 10 MDMA pills, which is consistent with her story in the US. So that could have been helpful to ruling in her favour. And he also says that she hit him, she slapped him yesterday. She admitted that she hit him first. And this is a really interesting piece of evidence, because when Johnny Depp testified, he seemed to not remember Amber Heard hitting him at all in the Australia incident, because he said that she threw 2 bottles at him and also put out a cigarette out on his face. But he never said that he remembered her slapping him or his response to that, which I think could be important, because it might help, it may cause the jury to think that he had some memory issues if he couldn't remember that piece of evidence. And Amber Heard is going forth and admitting to a physical act of violence for herself. So I think that could have caused some doubt and made them reconsider his version of events. And perhaps those pieces of evidence wouldn't have helped anything at all, because we also learned the jury did end up falling asleep during the testimony, and they seemed to not be paying attention so much that they had this conclusion that the marriage did not end on bad terms. So I don't understand why we would put the opinion of these 7 people who seem to not understand this case to that level and think that it should supersede the UK trial's judgment.
And my point is, I don't think she represents.
Taken aside.
I don't think she represents your average Joe victim in the street.
You could not be more wrong. You could try, but you would not be successful.
Who is that average Joe? This is exactly the problem.
I think Piers Morgan's idea of a typical victim doesn't actually exist in reality.
But when Amber Heard came out with what she said, she was believed.
You did
not! Johnny Depp's career went into a tailspin.
I don't know why he's lying. He didn't lose anything after she came forward with the TRO. She was the one who lost things. And people were debating taking her off of her movie. So I don't get where he's coming from. Like, how is his career in a tailspin? He still had Pirates back then. He was still in Fantastic Beasts. So and Dior was always with him. So I don't get why he's saying his career went into a tailspin. What is that about?
And as far as he was concerned, he was an innocent, wronged man. And so
Johnny Depp basically said that she didn't make a false accusation, and that ended up not being good enough because he changed his mind and said that he lied about that for no reason whatsoever. That was apparently okay.
he went to court to restore his reputation.
Yes, but this is the reputation that he ruined for himself because he agreed to a statement that basically agrees with Amber Heard, saying that she didn't make a false accusation. So he only has himself to blame.
Which he has a right to do.
But why didn't he just go to court several years ago and never make the statement that was basically him admitting that he did attack his wife? Like, I don't understand how you reconcile with the fact that he did that.
And we know how it panned out. It panned out with a lot of cognitive dissonance because we're trying to work out how a British jurisdiction can say, yes, he is an abuser and a wife beater, and how the American public and an American jury can say, no, absolutely not.
It's because they fell asleep.
Which is what the fascination about this story is. But when she came out saying, I was abused by Johnny Depp, his only recourse is through the courts because he couldn't do it any other way.
And the other thing that they don't seem to mention is that these accusations were made in private long before it ever came out in public, and he was agreeing to it for a long time before. If you look at the plane kicking text message, this was before they even got married. So Johnny Depp was made aware by his assistant that Amber Heard was making these accusations that he kicked her on the plane, and on top of that she's accusing him of physically attacking her in all these other cities. So he knows that well before they've gotten married, that he has the option to get out, and instead he's chosen to marry this woman who's made these made multiple accusations of physical abuse against him, and he's decided to marry her without a prenup. Now, what is the rationalization for why he would do such a thing?
But it is complicated.
It's not complicated.
There is no complexity in this case. Like, if you just look at the facts, it doesn't matter what the truth is, if he actually did it or not. What the evidence shows is that Amber Heard had accused Johnny Depp directly to his face well before they got married, at least in 2014. She told him this stuff. He knows that she's going to accuse him of physical abuse because she's done it multiple times. She's told multiple people about this. They've gone to therapy talking about the violence in their relationship, and he knows all this, and he's kind of nodding along. He says that he's placating her. He says that she convinced him that he was a monster and that he did these things. So yeah, it doesn't seem that complex. Like, if he's never shown any evidence of why he's suddenly not convinced by what she's told him, and it's just been so annoying, this attitude of like, I guess we'll never know, it's a he said, she said. But you don't actually need to know the exact details of what they did in the marriage. That's not the point. The point is the fact that he kept agreeing. This was not news to him. When she came out with these abuse claims, he knew that she was going to accuse him of physical abuse because she's been doing it for several years. So, you know, to say that this was a surprise, that she's making it up as she goes along, is a complete lie by Johnny Depp, because he knew that she'd been saying this stuff. And there has been no valid excuse as to why Johnny Depp would continue with this relationship, why he wouldn't break up with her. If he really didn't think that he did it, why he wouldn't break up with her as soon as he heard that she was making these accusations against him. There's no valid reasoning for why he wouldn't do that, why he kept going along with it. Why placate? Why would he choose to placate someone who's accused him of being violent and hitting her? Doesn't make any sense at all.
I'm not saying for a moment he's blameless.
But what are you blaming him for? Are we blaming him for the fact that he chose to placate this woman, that he chose to marry this woman who accused him of physical assault in a public place where people could see them? And if she is making it up, if she really is delusional and his assistant can tell him what the truth is, why would he go along with it? Why would he choose to marry this girl with no prenup if it really wasn't true? It makes absolutely no sense. Like, so is that what we're blaming him for? His complete stupidity? I don't understand. Like, and this is what I'm saying. Like, they're being very vague, and I need more specificity when people talk about this case, because I don't know what you mean. Like, what kind of blame should he get exactly?
I don't think she is a great standard bearer for victims of domestic violence, given that she herself was so violent.
Well,
that's where I'm sorry, I don't.
This is just so exhausting. I don't understand how you're getting this idea that she's so violent when they've spoken to each other about it. And she's this one conversation where they're talking about if she punched him or whatever, and she's like, "I didn't deck you," and he responds to her by saying that she couldn't deck him. So how can it be that she's incapable of decking him, that she's not able to overpower him? They're saying this stuff to each other, and yet somehow people end up with this idea that she's so violent. Like, why? Where's the evidence that she's so violent?
Liar, you're putting words in my mouth, just the way you put artificial facts in your head.
All right. Also, why is it that the Cannes jury have decided to really push this film, to put it in the prestigious opening slot? This is not, okay,
what's the answer?
Johnny Depp's got a right to work, but let's hold our nose and get... Well, the answer is, look at the film industry. What's it interested in? Bums on seats and money.
Yeah.
It's not there to make any moral
The fact that
judgments.
Roman Polanski still gets standing ovations.
It's all games out here in La La Land.
It is a morally bankrupt industry when it comes to these kind of things.
Life is unfair. Kill yourself or get over it.
Okay, so that was the end of the discussion. I don't have that much to say about Johnny Depp returning to movies. I don't think he's gonna come back to the American side very much, and he'll just like make his own movies with his production company and stuff, and that'll be that. I think people are gonna continue to give him backlash, and his stuff will be reviewed negatively. Like, I don't think it'll be an easy return. He has a lot of supporters, but there's still a lot of people that are against him. But I don't know. I don't have too many feelings about it. I always expected this to happen. So, yeah, that's all I have to say.